All right, sorry about that. We're getting started, well, kind of on time. I call the April 25th, 2024 Economic Development Committee meeting to order. And the first order of business is the approval of the March 28th, 2024 minutes.
I move that we pass, or that we approve the minutes.
Motion passes. On to the second item for business is the comprehensive plan update. And Denise, you'll take that over.
Good evening, Chair and members. Denise Lathrop, Community Development Director. So tonight we will be discussing 4 elements of the comprehensive plan. We have the economic development element, the North Central neighborhood element, the Marina District and Pacific Ridge elements of the comprehensive plan. And each of these, the economic development element is sort of the overarching goals for this city from an economic perspective, and then each of those neighborhoods have critical functions for economic development in our city. So this will be the first of several conversations that we will have with the committee on these elements. Our consultant team will be completing some additional analysis that will feed into these updates. Again, we're working on the 20-year planning horizon out to 2044. The city is designated a high-capacity transit community, so we have jobs and housing targets that we need to meet. At the last committee meeting, we were talking about the permanent emergency housing units, and so I put the definition that we have for emergency housing in our municipal code, and this was established when we adopted regulations in response to House Bill 1220 back in September 2021, which was the permanent supportive housing. We had some additional, at King County Planning Directors meeting today, there was a lot of discussion about emergency housing, permanent housing, and that. And so we are going to be going back and discussing whether or not these new permanent emergency housing units differ. From my interpretation, what this means is that they're permanent units and they provide temporary housing in some situations. So we'll make sure we get that clarification, but I just wanted to provide that follow-up to the question that came up at the last meeting. And right now, I'll just provide a broader overview of economic development. It's framed by the Growth Management Act, Vision 2050, and the Regional Economic Strategy, as well as King County countywide planning policies. The overarching goals are to promote and support economic opportunity for all people, regardless of their race, social, or economic status. These goals provide the critical economic foundations, such as promoting and supporting access to housing, transportation, education, employment choices, services, and amenities. They also support business creation, retention, and expansion. This includes things like creating policies that provide predictability in your local regulations and policies, partnerships with vocational educational programs, and support of small and minority businesses. Other focuses are on prioritizing diverse economic base that provides family wage jobs, and then supporting and leveraging key regional aspects, such as our proximity to the airport, to the Puget Sound, I-5, 509 corridors, and the broader region. And so the first, the economic development element to our comprehensive plan provides the overarching goals for the city in terms of how we want to grow our economy moving forward. One thing I wanted to highlight is that we recently received a grant from the Port of Seattle that's a little over $33,000 that our consultant team is going to be doing some additional analysis for us. And that will feed into the goals and policies, not just for the economic development element, but to any related elements of our plan. And so right now, in our initial discussions with our consultant Echo Northwest, they did some work for us on the innovation, on the moratorium area, so they will build upon the work that they did for us there. And
Is that 33,000 the matching? So we match 33,000 and they give us 33? Is that the?
no, that's the total.
About 3 or so.
Yeah, that is the total grant amount, and so there is some in-kind that we provide for, through staff time in that, but the total dollar amount that we get will compensate. I don't want to step out of terms on this, because I know that Rochelle was helping with this grant application, but the amount we get is $33,000, a little bit over that, and then we have some in-kind through our staff time in that.
But what I mean is, so if you're saying that we have some in-kind, meaning we do have a contribution for that grant. Okay, but we don't know what it is.
It's our staff time. I should have probably brought the grant
So we don't have to
application
have
with
any-
us.
But it is like then it would be like a budget line item. In other words, there is so is it 33,000? Do you know, usually it's been.
That's what the grant amount is for us, but there is match in terms of staff time that we are matching that, but that's pretty typical because we are working on it. Do you want to answer that?
I can look it up right here. I think it was 50% match.
So does that 50% of the grant or 50/50? In other words,
50, yes, 50.
traditionally, this point grant has been $1 per
Oh,
population.
I see what
right?
your
So I'm
question
asking
is.
33,000 because we have 33,000 residents. So we get 33, and then our contribution is also 33.
Yeah, so that's not the way this one is.
No, it's
Okay.
half.
50%, so it's 50% of the total grant. So we would, our match would be about
16
Yeah.
something.
5.
And then our staff time, though, it's not the same as volunteer time. I mean, staff time is still an expense, right? Because we pay for staff time.
But this is work that we'd be doing already.
Yeah.
Got you. Okay, now
And I'll confirm that, I believe it's like 25% match and 25% in kind, but I'll confirm that shortly.
Okay,
Report back.
just to understand what that is. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that one.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, so then some of the things that they are going to be looking at are focusing on economic sustainability and resilience, looking at some combination of policies and strategies, and some of those may be contained within the plan as well as external to the plan. We'll be looking at gaps such as small business development, leakage, whether economic readiness for our city, and then there will be some stakeholder outreach. We haven't identified what that might look like. There are consultants in the process of putting together a scope of work for us. But then they will also do some additional analysis and provide some recommendations. One of the things that they did discuss with us is just understanding and building staff capacity to implement economic policies. So our consultants had talked about the fact that in many situations, cities will have really high aspirations as to where they want to go and strategies they want to implement, but they don't have the staff resources to actually make it happen, and so you're not able to fulfill those goals in your plans. And then also identifying as the short, midterm, and long-term goals, and so then you can have some initial focus. So one of the things as we go through this tonight, as we walk through this, if there's anything that council is wanting to think about or consider looking forward, we can bring that up to our consultants so that they can factor that into some of the work that they'll be doing for us. Yeah, so,
Ask us those policies.
yes, yes.
All right.
So anyway, I was just trying to give the broader overview. And so on the economic development chapter, we've primarily updated information about our city, and we added a section on strategic advantages of our city. We updated employment data, and then we talked about the Innovation District Overlay Zone and the economic development element, as well as Chapter 9, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. There was a policy in the economic development element related to having a separate economic development plan for the Marina District. And it was just something that sort of stood out to us, and whether or not that's something council wants to keep in the plan as an aspiration down the road to develop a more strategic economic development plan for the Marina District. We also have Chapter 10, the Marina District element, so we could have that more identified in that particular element as well.
Go ahead.
I guess my question is, does it help or hinder us in having it in both places, or one or the other?
No, I think the economic development is sort of taking a higher up look, but I think having it there probably elevates the importance of it, and especially because you can go into more specifics when you get into the element itself.
So having it in both places is a better idea than taking it out. And
Yeah, and I think my question more was related to, is that an interest of the council to actually put together a separate economic development plan for the Marina District? And that might be, yeah.
I've heard of my colleague.
Well, my only concern is redundancy, because you do have a little bit of an overlap here, but we also have tasked staff with a pretty detailed marina plan. And that thing is like, what, 100 pages or something? I mean, so we've got staff working on that right now. So if we're talking about the Marina District, do you eliminate the marina plan from that, you cut the marina out as separate, or do you include the marina master plan as part of the Marina District plan, so that a decision would need to be made there? But it is a lot to task staff with, at least at this juncture, in my opinion, and I do think on this, on our work plan, we do have an upcoming pretty detailed discussion coming up about some Marina District considerations, I think in September, maybe August, talking about different zoning areas. Do we want to like subdivide the Marina District according to some zoning? So I don't know if we want to task staff with embarking on, are you talking about for the comprehensive plan, like create that inside of the comprehensive plan due when the rest of this is due?
No, the question was more, there was a specific goal about establishing a separate economic development plan for just the Marina District. And I think that would be separate from the Marina Master Plan, because the Marina Master Plan is more of a capital improvement plan document. And so it's specifically focused on the marina operations and that, and this would be more of an economic vision. I mean, we don't have to have an answer to that today. I mean, it's something that we can, talk about some more at a future meeting, or if we want to explore what that might look like. The option to that would just be to add additional goals and policies to the Marina District element, which is embedded in the comprehensive plan, and that might be enough. It could be something too where we, with Echo Northwest, to get some additional recommendations from them as to what might make the most sense for us.
Would you want that as a separate subdivision of your comprehensive plan?
It already
That would be
is.
done- Well, it is here, but I mean, what you're recommending, would you want that compiled and completed along with a comprehensive plan?
No, not necessarily. It's a goal in the plan,
I
and so, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Then would we want to, is this our discussion, or would we want to bring that to the full council? I mean, how are
I
you
think,
feeling about that?
I think it would be the committee's decision
About tasking the staff with creating a separate economic development plan for the Marina District, and then
yeah,
outside of this, they've got the Marina as what, chapter
Chapter
10.
10. It
So
would be,
expand chapter 10
it would
as
be
a separate
expanding,
document.
exactly.
Okay.
It'd be expanding Chapter 10, is my understanding, and then leaving it as a small section in the economic development plan.
Okay, what about this, Jeremy? What if we recommend that discussion is combined with our work plan discussion that's coming up in August? Because that is going to be key for our vision. It's,
Denise,
what
what
is
are
it?
It may be as simple as just retaining this this implementation strategy, which is on page, sorry, I'm just lost track of my thing. It's on page 8.6 of the economic development element. So it's ED 1.9.1, which is basically the strategy is to establish a Marina District Economic Development Plan.
Yeah.
And so it could just be that we retain this as a long-term aspiration, but again, it is something that you want to think about. Is this something you really want to go and implement in the long term?
I think so.
Okay.
So-
I'm trying to look up, I think what I saw, I might have seen that on futures. I might have seen it on futures for economic development for August, that discussion coming up.
Okay.
Does that ring a bell to either one of you? Okay. All right.
I think you've got direction.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got the direction you need. All right.
Thank you.
There's a lot of text on these slides, but a lot of it is for the public benefit for people who are reviewing this information for our comp plan update and community outreach. So you're all familiar with the North Central neighborhood element, given all the work we did this past year on the moratorium area and establishing that innovation district overlay zone. We've made some changes to this element. The element is fairly dated, and so we tried to really update it and refresh the language to reflect the direction that council had given us as part of our discussion for the innovation district zone. And we had a lot of discussion about facilitating economic diversification, creating those partnerships with Highland College and other businesses to cultivate learning within our community and creating job opportunities and that. and also on focusing on small business development and entrepreneurship. And so, again, we may make some additional tweaks to this based on the work that Echo Northwest is doing, but we're mostly just looking for input based on the changes that we shared with you. Is this going in the right direction? Are there any additional recommendations you have at this time? There's opportunities for you to reflect on it further as we move along through this process, but any type of input now, we can just, add that to the plan or share that with our consultants too.
I think, well, colleagues.
I had a couple questions. You talked about industrial uses. You had a recommendation about changing the word to low impact. And what is low impact industrial uses, and would that make a tangible difference?
Okay, let me see here.
Maybe it's not a question you needed me to ask right now. It's on page 11. And it says, there was a comment about changing the wording to under industrial uses.
Is there a policy number? For some reason, my printout of the packet didn't have page numbers on the packet. Okay.
Policies focus on industrial type uses. Is that still the case, or should that be changed? For example, would it make sense to introduce policies such as increase the supply of land zone to accommodate low impact industrial uses? So it's a question. I didn't know if it was a question for us or a question for you. It's in the pink box on the side. So it's commented NS5, question for the city. It's a pink box on the side of the PDF.
Okay, and this is under the North Central neighborhood element?
No, that's still chapter 8.
That is still chapter 8.
Okay.
So we moved
Chapter
forward.
9. We moved forward on chapter 9.
Yeah, and most of the policy questions for council, we've just highlighted in yellow because our consultants who did the initial run through of this were posing questions to staff, and so I didn't change all of that out at this point because we're still walking through the document.
Okay, then the only question I have for chapter 9,
Thank you.
I guess, was the south, what's the south sub-area?
That is the area that has the innovation district zone.
Okay.
So it's the.
South of 216.
Yeah, so
Okay.
it shows that area just southeast of the 509 right-of-way.
All right, thank you. That's it.
Okay.
If I can just clarify.
Go ahead.
Thank you, and my apologies for being late. We're trying to arrange cars with too many drivers and not enough cars. My understanding of low impact versus higher impact industrial use would be something, a low impact might be a food preparation area where they're making food and packaging it for airplanes versus an auto body shop. Because the auto body shop has a hard impact on the environment in the area, whereas the food preparation probably does not. Is that accurate? Low impact versus high impact, or higher?
Probably, and that was probably a question from our consultant to us. And so, I mean, at this point, we aren't really proposing any changes to the permitted uses because we did sort of go through and do a pretty good scrubbing, and the area that has the more intensive uses or part of what's been built out as part of the Des Moines Creek Business Park. So that area is north of 216th, whereas the areas to the south are more moderate levels. So you have Pac Stainless, Graycon, which are sort of more high precision type, low truck intensive uses, that kind of thing.
So it'd be more the transportation in and out rather than the actual, what is being produced in the industrial area.
Yeah, typically if it's a high intensity, there's gonna be a lot of distribution focus. And so because of our limitations on our transportation infrastructure, that has been concentrated to the areas north of 216th because of the access along 24th Avenue to get out of the business park. It's all interconnected there. And
Remember, that was a conversation we had about where we were gonna allow trucking and not allow trucking.
Yeah.
Right,
Part
and I
of the
was just
deal.
trying to,
Yeah.
now that makes a lot more sense to me.
yeah,
When I read it, that's what I was, initially I was thinking what was produced rather than the distribution in and out.
right.
Okay.
To answer your question, Denise, I do believe that the 4 bullet points up there, and the overlay and I think our consultant is on the right path.
Okay.
I do.
So the Marina District element, this element probably had the most update in the last comprehensive plan update because we had design guidelines and there was a period of time where we were really focusing on the Marina District. We did a few building height increases, pretty modest, and so it's more, whether or not, especially given the work that's been happening with the marina redevelopment, the marina steps, just wanting to confirm that as it currently reads, that reflects the council's vision for that area, or if there are areas where council would like to see more updates made to that chapter. This is another one that as we move through some of the analysis from our consultants, they may have some recommendations for changes down the road, and we would definitely bring that information to you and describe the rationale for why they might be making recommended changes as well.
Yeah, a couple of the things that I'd really like to see address the vacant and underutilized properties, and what suggestions are there that the city can do to encourage those to be utilized, essentially, and utilized fully. Everything from zoning changes to, if I don't know that there are a lot of incentives that we can provide, but to the extent that we can provide incentives, I think it would be nice to see more, to understand what those incentives are and what could be done to encourage for better utilization of those properties.
Thank you. I'm still caught up a little bit on the idea that I thought on the work plan, I saw that we were gonna have a specific discussion about building heights and zoning and things like that in August. So I think that is a good place to take some of this forward, like, yeah, good for now, but there's a discussion plan for August. And that's kind of where my mind is going on that right now, even bringing back up the idea, should we actually direct staff to create a specific mission vision for the Marina District? And our discussion could, bring up considerations for that.
That's good. What we can do is we can let our consultants know so that when they're starting their gap analysis and their evaluations, that they can focus on the Marina District, knowing that there's going to be a discussion coming up in August, and prepare for that as sort of one of the first reviews that they do for us. I think that would be really helpful, because then it provides some good background information to inform your discussions on the zoning aspects.
Excellent.
Okay. Okay, so the last one for discussion tonight is the Pacific Ridge neighborhood element. And as I had indicated in your packet, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, the city did a neighborhood improvement plan and a SEPA planned action for this neighborhood, and it really envisioned dramatic rebuild of Pacific Ridge. So the zoning allows for very high density residential, mixed use, primarily mixed use along Pacific Highway South, and then more residential as you go in. And to date, we haven't really messed with this too much because of the SEPA planned action. So that basically means that the city did, they completed an environmental impact statement that looked at the build out of Pacific Ridge. And so you looked at what the impacts of all the jobs and housing growth for that build out would be. And so when somebody comes in to do a development, as long as they're meeting the development requirements, they usually have to do a supplemental transportation analysis to look at transportation concurrency and that. But for the most part, they don't have to go through a normal SEPA review process for us. And so it does streamline development in that area. It's been very successful. It has a companion Pacific Ridge design guidelines, and so the projects that you see up there, Point by Vintage, the hotel.
So is Point by Vintage called Pacific Ridge even though it's on the west side?
Yes, yes. And
How far does Pacific Ridge go?
it,
I'll repeat the question.
Okay.
So you're saying Point by Vintage is considered Pacific Ridge, even though it's on the west side. How far west does Pacific Ridge go?
in some places, it goes up to 24th on the west, especially by 216th, so where there's that area just north of 216th and west of Pack Highway, where Bartels and
FAA.
no, the FAA is on the other side, so it's
just
the outdoor
East side of
research.
24th.
Yeah. And then as you go south of 216th, it tends to just capture those commercially zoned properties, and so it's a little bit of a jagged all the way down to Kent Des Moines Road.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. That's something new. Thank you. For me?
My question is when was the last time we took a look at building heights up there? Was that when we did Sound Transit?
We haven't really messed with building heights too much. The provisions for, they use a floor area ratio, but the area on the west side of Pacific Highway South, I want to think is 50, or let me think. Point by Vintage, was that 65? I think it was 55 on the west side. And then on the east side, it's 85 feet. But it can go up to, I want to think it can go up to 200 feet, but there are factors that go into it. So it was a complicated method for determining that, but there's different types of floor area ratios. And so the idea is that you could go up, but as you go up, the buildings get skinnier and you have a little bit more green space. And there's also some clustering and I believe there may be some public benefit that is required as part of that. I could be wrong, because I know there is some of that for the downtown area.
So, is that something that we want to have the consultant look at if we're utilizing the building heights up there to our advantage, or if we have our full potential? Excuse me.
Yeah, and we've never, to date, we haven't really had anybody request higher building heights other than the hotel, because of, they were gonna go above the building heights and we added a code amendment to allow for special architectural features to go above that height limit. But beyond that, like Waterview Crossing didn't really request any building height increases. I think my understanding is that once you go from the 5/2 construction and you start getting into the steel and concrete, it becomes so expensive that it's a different type of development that goes in. But
You have to go really high.
yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if the market's there yet for us, but it's good to be prepared for it. And it's probably good to have Echo Northwest really look at that whole application of floor area ratios and how we are applying it, and whether it's really maximizing the return on investment for development and making sure that we're attracting development.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, so I'll make a note of that.
And then was this going to, thank you, Jeremy, was this gonna segue into the other ask? It looks like it is. I'll wait for you to talk about that.
So, really, I was just doing more of an overview. The changes, again, are mostly related to updating information about Rapid Ride and Sound Transit's Link Light Rail and some of the Midway Park acquisitions. We haven't actually gone in and done the text amendments related to the Midway Park acquisitions, but that's something we noted that we will be doing for this element. And again, this was a really broad vision for the city. We haven't really done any sub-area planning to change that. And so if we did, I doubt that it would, we might have to do some supplemental SEPA analysis if it's a dramatic change from what was planned for, but it's about as dense as you can go up there. A lot of redevelopment potential, though. That's I think the biggest thing is, when you're in Pacific Ridge, there's a lot of single-family development in that, and the idea was that that whole area would redevelop to high density, and so there is that opportunity. It may be that when we get into some of the middle housing work, there may be some recommendations that come out of that would come to, be up for discussion for this neighborhood as well.
Do you have any idea what percentage of that neighborhood is at the high density level that we envisioned, and what's not been developed, or is there any way to apply sort of we're halfway there?
Oh,
like
we've barely started. Mm-hmm. I mean, the major developments that have happened since the Pacific Ridge zoning, and some of it preceded my time, but would be like maybe the Heritage Plaza site and on the south end, there was the dental building on the west side, the hotel, Waterview Crossing, and Point by Vintage. Mm-hmm. Those are really the highest density. Everything east can go up to 75. Yeah, it can go up around 85, 75 to 85 feet. It depends, some of it depends on the way the building heights read. It depends on your location on Pacific Highway South or to the east. And the same on the west side, there's a lot of redevelopment opportunities there. And we are starting to see interest there. We've had a couple of pre-apps, and then I think with the interest rates and cost of construction going up, that slowed some of that interest. Yeah.
But is there a way to sort of get a percentage that we can start showing some progress with, as opposed to, we have the idea that that'll be a much higher, much more dense area, but as, is indicated, it's
Yeah.
been that vision for a while, and so how do we
Yeah, it's a
measure
very
any kind of
small
progress?
percentage, but yeah, we could probably quickly do a calculation of this is, we have two different zones. There's Pacific Ridge Residential, and then there's Pacific Ridge Commercial, which allows for mixed use. And so we could say, well, based on the Pacific Ridge Commercial, I guess the area north of 216th, where outdoor research and that, that area wasn't initially envisioned in this plan. And so that's a big change in terms of commercial development. But along the spine of Pack Highway, and that we could sort of break that out in terms of what has been provided on the residential versus the other.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking, is that particularly
Yeah.
that area on the east side of Pack Highway,
We haven't made a dent.
any way to get some
residential.
benchmarking so that we can just start looking to see, and if we're not making progress, why?
Right,
And then start to address that.
makes sense.
Thank you.
So with regard to, there was just the ST3 activity and the college and everything going on there. The Pack Ridge zone does the zoning change on the west side of Pack Highway, starting at Kent Des Moines Road and going south past the college, like to 240th? Is that the same zoning? Does it go up, is it less or more or the same as Pack Ridge?
It is comparable because we, when we did our Envision Midway study with the city of Kent, we basically created zoning around Highline College that we labeled transit community. So we have a transit community zone that is very similar. The only difference is we don't have specific design guidelines like we do in Pacific Ridge, but we do have a design review chapter that have guidelines there that we follow.
So I guess it's a multifaceted conversation. Is there's nothing here about a plan for the Pack Highway corridor all the way up through town, and it's kind of it is Des Moines, and it's a big impact on our community, especially as our city goes like this, right? As it nears the end, the highway is closer and closer and closer to everything. So I'm not sure if this is a good place to have another chapter that says, here's our economic development plan for Pack Highway that includes segments Pack Ridge, transit-oriented development, and then further on down. I'm just bringing this up to the committee to say, would that be appropriate? I do know that just this morning, I was approached by the college, and they would like to have a conversation about, like, what are we going to do here? There's going to be this giant affordable housing project going in across the street, and even a discussion about how's that going to look to our side. How are we working the economic development across the street connected with whatever we have going on the highway?
Yeah, we did do an initial sort of small-scale sub-area planning around the college. After Envision Midway, we called this South Des Moines sub-area planning. We never adopted any a sub-area plan, and I think it was mostly because the geographic area was so small. But we did recommend some comprehensive plan preferred land use updates, especially to the area on the south side of 240th, that mirrors the college. And then we also created zoning around, the south 272nd Street and along the spine, that we created the Woodmont Commercial Zone. And again, this was an outgrowth of the Envision Midway work, and it basically was trying to capture that kind of zoning that would be transit-oriented development while allowing for more highway commercial type uses like the Mack truck and some of those uses in between those sort of more transit nodes.
So I guess that what I was trying to ask is, we've divided our city up into these chapters, but we didn't address this main corridor that goes, the main commercial corridor. And so my question was, would we entertain that? Would that be a recommendation of our consultant to do something like that? If not, I'll leave it alone. If so, is that?
That's a good question that we can definitely propose to them. I think that's.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll make a note of that because,
It's an interstate, and we have
Yes.
frontage on the entire thing, so. it
yeah,
might be
yeah.
Good to have a vision for that, if they think it's a good idea. Thank you.
And really,
That's all.
then this is just sort of a timeline of the other elements. We took the Environment Committee element, or the Conservation and Environment element to the Environment Committee. Transportation is gonna be a little bit more challenging because we're trying to get some consultant support on that one. But that will go to Transportation, and then we've got these other elements that we're bringing forward. The Parks, Recreation, Open Space is pretty easy one. It's basically importing what was recently adopted in the Parks, Recreation, Senior Services Master Plan. And so we'll probably bring that back to the committee with the Healthy Des Moines element. And then the housing element is probably gonna be later this summer. We do have to take that to, King County has to do a review of that. So we're gonna wanna try and have that sewn up by like early fall, because it's taking them a while to get through their review. So then below is just sort of a synopsis of what we have coming in the summer and fall. Great, well, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
If that is it, that brings us to the end of our meeting. Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All right, we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Denise.